Have you ever had that feeling where you show up to a party and like all the best food is totally gone?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the music is already winding down and everyone is laughing about some inside joke that happened, an hour ago. You're just standing there looking at the empty appetizer plates, realizing you completely missed the actual event.
It's the classic always late to the party syndrome. And it's incredibly frustrating because you put in the effort to show up, but the timing was just entirely off.
That is exactly how it feels when you try to find great digital assets in a new market. You spend hours doing research, you finally spot what looks like an amazing opportunity, you think you've cracked the code.
Right, but then you realize the entire market saw it 3 weeks ago.
Exactly. The price already reflects it. You're essentially just picking through the leftovers that the truly early buyers decided to, well, leave behind.
We see this pattern everywhere in digital ecosystems, actually. I mean, people experience it with meme coins, they see it in NFT collections, and it is especially brutal in domain markets.
Yeah, totally.
But the reason it happens isn't because people are bad at searching, it's because they're fundamentally looking at the market the wrong way.
Which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking an incredibly insightful guide on timing the Solana domain market, and the goal today is to completely flip how you look at digital marketplaces.
It's a total mindset shift.
Right. We want to shift your mindset from looking at what is currently listed to discovering the hidden alpha in what just changed.
Finding that movement.
Exactly. Brought to you by Negotiate.name, the simple way to bid on over 5,000 Solana domains, with new names added daily and user listings available to browse too. Make unlimited offers on premium.sol names without locking up your Solana, see what you can negotiate, and discover names before the rest of the market does. And if you own premium Solana domains, you can submit your names for sale while keeping your contact information private. Negotiate.name helps broker the conversation, so buyers are not sending offers into the void, and sellers are not missing serious inquiries that sit unseen for months.
Discovering names before the rest of the market does, that is the perfect jumping off point. Because to actually achieve that, we first have to recognize why our standard browsing habits are, well, actually working against us.
I want to push on that right away because I think most of us assume we know how to browse. You go to a marketplace, you type a keyword into the search bar, or maybe you sort a category by the lowest price and you just scroll. How is that working against us?
Because you are falling victim to what the source material calls the static snapshot.
The static snapshot.
Yeah. Think about the architecture of a standard marketplace.
Right.
When you open a site and see like 1,000 Solana domains listed,
Yeah.
you're only seeing existing inventory. You are looking at a single frozen frame of a movie and trying to understand the entire plot.
Wait, I feel like I'm missing something there because if I'm looking for a house, right, and I go on a real estate website, I just want to see the houses that are for sale today. Why does it matter if it's a static snapshot?
Well, because a static directory only tells you what exists, it doesn't tell you the context of how it got there.
Oh, I see.
Right. In a static view, you don't know what was listed yesterday. You don't know what disappeared this morning and then suddenly came back. You don't know which names have been sitting there getting completely stale for 6 months and which ones literally just popped onto the market 10 seconds ago.
So it's completely out of context.
Exactly. A marketplace without memory can show you inventory, but it cannot show you opportunity.
There is a really powerful analogy in our source material that suddenly makes perfect sense. The author says a domain marketplace with no memory is like a financial trader staring at a chart that only has one single candle on it.
It is a brilliant way to visualize the problem. If you are a trader and you only have one candle on your screen, you know the current price.
But that's it.
Yeah, you are completely blind to the momentum. You can't see the trend line. You cannot tell if the asset is breaking out, if it's crashing, or if the seller is getting incredibly aggressive and dropping the price minute by minute.
So the data might technically be public, maybe accessible through an API or a search bar, but the actual movement is entirely hidden unless someone is actively saving yesterday's snapshot and comparing it to today's snapshot.
Precisely. You need yesterday's market to understand today's market. And this is why most people are late to the party. They are analyzing the static inventory. The alpha, that early advantage is almost always found in the change.
So if the advantage is just finding the delta between yesterday and today, we aren't really analyzing digital real estate anymore, are we? We are essentially psychoanalyzing the human beings who are listing these domains.
That is exactly what you are doing. You are decoding seller intent.
Seller intent, right.
Yeah, when a domain moves from unavailable to available, or it moves from sitting dormant in a wallet to suddenly being active on an aftermarket, that is a massive behavioral signal. A human being woke up, connected their wallet, and took an action.
They decided they want out or they want liquidity.
Yes. Maybe they are just testing the market to see if anyone is paying attention. Maybe they suddenly need fast liquidity for another investment.
Or they're dumping a portfolio.
Right. Maybe they're preparing to offload a massive portfolio. Whatever their reason, their entry into the active market is a brief window of opportunity before the rest of the crowd incorporates that new listing into their daily routine.
I'm thinking about the contrast the source draws with old listings. Like, if a domain has been sitting on a marketplace for 6 months, there is usually a very good reason it hasn't sold.
A very good reason, yeah.
The broader market has already evaluated it, buyers have passed on it, or the seller is just stubbornly demanding way too much money. But a fresh listing, I mean, the crowd hasn't reacted yet.
And this brings up a fascinating psychological quirk of the market, actually. Why are fresh listings so often drastically mispriced?
Well, I would assume it's just panic selling. Someone needs cash fast, so they price it low.
Panic is one reason, certainly. But more often, it is a lack of deep category knowledge. Yeah. Very often, a seller will look at the absolute bottom floor price of the entire Solana domain market. They'll see the generic random domains are selling for almost nothing, and they will price their premium, highly specific name near that generic floor. Wow. They're essentially ignoring the intrinsic quality of their specific asset.
So they are treating a highly specialized asset like it's a generic commodity. It's like looking at the spot price of copper when you're trying to sell a vintage gold ring.
Exactly. They just look at the metal market and guess. And you want to be the first person to see that gold ring hit the display case.
But let me ask you about the other side of this movement. What about price drops? If a seller has a domain sitting there for months and they finally drop the price, doesn't that just prove it was a bad name to begin with? I mean, why would a price drop on a stale listing be considered a fresh opportunity?
It comes back to seller intent. A meaningful price drop can completely revive a stale listing because it shows the seller psychology is shifting.
Okay, how so?
They are finally capitulating. They're getting realistic, or they are actively trying to attract immediate attention.
The operative word there being meaningful, I assume, because the source gives a huge warning about algorithmic noise.
It is a vital distinction to make.
Yeah.
If a seller drops their price from 2 Solana down to 1.999999 Solana, that is just noise.
Right.
That is not a behavioral change. That is a seller trying to game the recently updated sorting algorithm on the marketplace. It is a marketing trick.
Yeah, just bumping the post.
Exactly.
Right.
But if a seller drops a price from 10 Solana down to 6 Solana, well, that is a clearance event. They are signaling a genuine willingness to exit the position.
Okay, I am totally tracking with the concept of looking for movement over static inventory, but let's be realistic for a second. If I'm looking at a live feed of newly listed domains, 99% of them are still going to be absolute garbage.
Oh, without a doubt.
People list terrible names all day long. If I am trying to act fast before the crowd notices the movement, I don't have time to do a deep psychological profile on every single seller. I mean, how do I actually separate the signal from the junk in real time?
You have to build a ruthless internal filtering system. The source actually breaks down 5 distinct criteria you need to evaluate instantly. If you don't apply these filters, you aren't finding alpha, you are just hoarding digital junk.
Let's see if we can deduce what these are. I assume the first thing you look at are the core aesthetics of the name itself.
Yes. The very first hurdle is simply length. In digital naming ecosystems, shorter is almost universally better. We're talking 1 to 4 characters, clean, short words, or rare, low-digit numerics.
Why is shorter inherently better, though? Is it just a prestige flex, like having a 1-letter Twitter handle? Or is there a functional reason?
It is both prestige and utility.
Yeah.
Functionally, short names are significantly easier to type into a mobile wallet without making an error.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, they fit better on user interfaces. But psychologically, a short, punchy name commands more authority. It implies you are early to the ecosystem.
That makes total sense. And I imagine the spelling has to be flawless, too.
That is the second aesthetic filter, spelling. It must be clean. If a name uses awkward hyphens or substitutes a Z for an S or uses numbers instead of letters, you need to walk away.
The source mentions the radio test, right?
Yes, the classic benchmark. If you said the domain name out loud on a podcast or the radio, would the listener know exactly how to spell it without you explaining it character by character? If they wouldn't, it is a bad name.
Okay, so once a name passes the aesthetic test, it's short, it's spelled correctly, then we have to look at utility. What is the actual use case for it?
That brings us to category. Does the name fit into a recognized growing trend within the ecosystem? The source lists a few key buckets of demand in the Solana space right now.
Like what?
Things like trading, payments, artificial intelligence agents, meme culture, and wallet identity. A name has to actually belong to an active narrative.
So a beautifully spelled short name that refers to, say, DD players is completely useless because the category is dead.
Precisely.
Right.
And that ties directly into the fourth filter, which is the buyer pool.
The buyer pool.
Right. Who is the actual human being that will eventually want this name? We are going to explore that deeply in a moment because it is the most critical piece of the puzzle.
Let me guess the final filter. It has to be price.
It is price, but with a specific caveat. It isn't just about finding the absolute cheapest domain. It is about asking, is this underpriced compared to its specific category?
Ah, okay.
Yeah, an AI domain priced at 5 Solana might be an incredible steal, while a random noun priced at 1 Solana might be a total ripoff. You have to evaluate the price relative to the category trend.
Okay, but listen to what you are asking a buyer to do here. You want me to evaluate the length, verify the spelling, categorize the trend, estimate the buyer pool, and cross-reference the relative price, all within the few minutes before the rest of the market notices the fresh listing.
It sounds like a lot.
It is. I mean, I would be completely paralyzed by analysis. How is a human supposed to process that fast enough?
Well, that is the secret. And it's why the source insists that daily market watching is vital. You do not try to run a rigid 5-step checklist every single time you see a name. You internalize these filters through daily exposure until it becomes pure muscle memory.
So you aren't really analyzing from scratch every day?
No, you are calibrating your baseline. Think about walking into your local grocery store. If you walk in exactly as the shelves are being restocked, you don't evaluate every single item in the entire store to see if there is a mispriced deal.
Right, because I already know what's usually there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know the store. You know it belongs on the shelves. Your eyes instantly scan the newly stocked items, and if they put a premium steak in the discount bin by mistake, you spot it in half a second. You aren't evaluating the whole market. You're only evaluating the delta.
That completely changes how I was looking at it. The repetition is what allows for the speed. And that speed requires a very specific mentality, which the source describes using terms like the trench trader or the DN mindset. For anyone listening who maybe doesn't spend 20 hours a day deep in the crypto weeds, what do those terms actually mean in this context?
It is a colloquial way to describe the highly active, high-risk participants who live in the absolute weeds of the market. Trench traders aren't waiting for quarterly earnings reports or reading polished press releases. They are tracking raw, second-by-second momentum.
They're watching the literal trenches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the core philosophy of a trench trader is that a narrative that is already plastered all over social media is a narrative that is already over.
The money has already been made.
Exactly. They know intuitively that a token that is already pumped 500% behaves fundamentally differently than a token that is quietly forming a base before a breakout. The alpha isn't in the established noisy inventory. It is in the quiet early movement.
And applying that mindset to domains leads us to what the source calls the natural buyer test. You mentioned earlier that understanding the buyer pool is the most critical filter. How does this test actually work in practice?
Well, the natural buyer test is a ruthless, rapid-fire question you have to ask yourself before buying any fresh listing. You ask, who is the specific end user that eventually wants to own this name?
Okay.
If you cannot instantly visualize a specific type of person or business, you do not buy it.
Let's role play this so I can see it in action. Let's say I am tracking the market and I see a fresh listing pop up. The name is Fast Solana Payments for You.swell. It is long, but it clearly fits into the payments category, and the seller priced it really low. Does that pass the natural buyer test?
Let's run it through the test. Who's the natural buyer for Fast Solana Payments for You.sol? Is it a major payment processing company? No. Serious company wants a clean, premium brand name. They aren't going to build a multi-million-dollar business on a URL that looks like a spam email.
Fair point. Okay, is it a retail consumer?
No, a regular person wants their own first or last name for their wallet address. So who is left? No one. That name has no natural buyer. It is just junk inventory.
Ah, I see. Okay, let's look at the other extreme. What if the fresh listing is simply pay.sol?
The natural buyer pool is massive and obvious. Every single checkout tool, every merchant application, every decentralized finance protocol, and every wallet app on the network wants to own the definitive word for transactions. You immediately know the demand exists.
And the source gives a few other concrete examples of this. A trading-related name obviously appeals to bot builders or algorithmic signal groups.
Right.
An AI agent name appeals to software developers building automation tools. A common first name domain obviously appeals to the millions of human beings who share that name.
Yes. You have to be able to bridge the gap between the unaware seller who just listed the domain and the ultimate natural buyer who will eventually want it.
It is essentially like going to a massive, sprawling flea market. You're digging through boxes of old tools. You don't buy a strange, highly specialized carburetor just because the vendor just put it on the table and it looks shiny.
Exactly.
You buy it because you intimately know a mechanic across town who has been desperately searching for that exact part for a specific vintage car restoration.
That is a phenomenal analogy. You are acting as the intelligent router between mispriced supply and natural demand. But you can only be the router if you know the demand actually exists before you buy the supply.
Right, otherwise you're just hoarding carburetors.
Precisely. A fresh listing with no natural buyer is just new inventory. A fresh listing with a natural buyer is your opportunity.
Which brings us full circle to the core philosophy of this entire deep dive. It all comes down to passive browsing versus active watching.
Absolutely. Passive browsing asks the market, what is available for me to look at right now? Active market watching demands of the market, what just became available right this second, before the rest of the crowd has had their morning coffee.
Passive browsing asks for inventory. Active watching asks for movement.
And in a thin early market, timing the movement is absolutely everything.
So, to summarize the battle plan for anyone listening, if you want to find the best digital assets, and specifically Solana domains, you have to stop acting like a passive browser staring at a one-candle chart.
You really do.
You need to utilize tools and marketplaces that have memory. You need to track meaningful seller intent, like massive capitulation-style price drops. You need to aggressively filter for length, spelling, and category trends, and you must subject every single potential purchase to the ruthless natural buyer test.
If you build that muscle memory, you stop arriving late to the party. You start walking in exactly as the doors open.
But I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up. The source material heavily emphasizes the massive advantage of seeing these fresh listings before the human crowd notices them. The edge relies on you being faster than other people. But think about the trajectory of the ecosystem. As crypto matures and as AI bots become increasingly sophisticated at analyzing these microchanges instantly, applying those 5 exact aesthetic and utility filters in a fraction of a second, how long will this window of opportunity actually stay open?
It's a great question.
Will the definition of being early inevitably shift from human minutes down to machine milliseconds? And when algorithms develop perfect, instantaneous market memory, well, how will you adapt your strategy to find the alpha then?
That is the invisible frontier approaching all digital markets. It is going to force everyone to evolve.
Something to keep you up at night as you hunt for your next domain. The landscape is shifting quickly, so don't just show up to eat the leftovers. Look for the delta, catch the fresh movement, and find the opportunity before the crowd even knows it exists. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.